Welcome, everybody. I'm going to get started here. We've got a lot to go through today, and I'm very excited to share with you. So again, the name of this workshop is Harnessing the Conference Afterglow. And my name is Amy Broadhurst, and I'm going to be your instructor. I have about 8 years, I call in the trenches of ERG work. And since I have left corporate America, I have written 2 books. You see them there on the screen, the ERG handbook, everything you wanted to know about ERGs but didn't know who to ask, and the ERG handbook companion workbook. Basically, these 2 books are to really, I call my model that I use for ERGs, the get her done model. And yes, I'm Southern, but basically the model is really about equipping ERG leaders with the knowledge and the tools to help better balance their paid jobs with their passion jobs. And I know how that was when I was trying to do that myself. And so that was the impetus for me to write the book and pull together the companion workbook with all the worksheets. I'd love to connect with anybody that wants to connect with me on LinkedIn. So if you want to take that QR code and connect with me on LinkedIn, that would be awesome. There are going to be some other opportunities throughout the workshop where I'm going to have some QR codes for you to get some free stuff. And so keep your phones out so that you can get those QR codes and get some additional resources. So Out and Equal is almost over. And I know everybody is excited, a lot of enthusiasm. You've been inspired. You've seen some amazing speakers, and you can't wait to get back to your workplace and start putting all of these plans into action. So we have the euphoria and the excitement of everything being over. And then we have all of these ideas about strategy and goals and planning. And we have so much that we want to do. We end up being in this situation where we have all of these ideas. So the question is, how do you get from all of these ideas to a place where things are organized and you and your leadership team, or if you're going to be, if you're a member that's attending and things you're going to take back to your ERG, how do you get from here to here? Well, the answer to that is multi-year planning. And multi-year planning is really important. And it's something that actually I learned how to do, figuring it out after coming back from an Out and Equal conference. So the multi-year plan is in 4 stages. My company is called Inclusive Space. And so I have developed this 4-step plan for multi-year planning. It's brainstorming, prioritizing, documenting, and aligning. So those are the 4 stages of the multi-year planning. Today, we're going to focus on the first 2 stages, which are brainstorming and prioritizing. And then I'm hoping that we're going to have enough time that I'm going to be able to at least show you the 3rd stage, which is documenting your plan. So I want this to be interactive. So I don't want you to feel like you just have to sit here and listen to me talk, although that's probably what most of this time will be, you'll be doing. But what I'd like to do is, as we go through some of the questions and the process around multi-year planning, I'd love for you to be ready to put some of your ideas into the comments or chat feature, because this is an opportunity for us to share and collaborate with each other. And people might get some ideas from you. You might get some ideas from other people. So I'm going to give you a little bit of time to make sure that we can actually do some of this work here, so that when you leave, you'll have a really good foundation and understanding and can take this back to your ERG and hopefully begin to create that multi-year plan. So in this first part, we're going to cover the ERG multi-year brainstorming worksheet. And I have put 3 templates into this session. And so you'll have access to the 3 templates that we're going to use. And then I'll tell you how you can get access to the last 2 templates, which are for the last two stages, which are documenting and aligning. So let's start first with brainstorming. This is what the worksheet looks like. You'll see it has 5 questions on it, and we're going to cover 3 questions in this session. So the first question is this: if there were no barriers, what are the things that you would like for your ERG to change or implement? So I want you to think about that for a minute. If there were no barriers, I'm talking no barriers with money, resources, personnel, politics, any of that. If there were no barriers, what are some things that you would really want your ERG to change or implement? I like to refer to this as blue sky thinking. So we're going to take a minute to do a little blue sky thinking. If you would put in the chat either one, or if you have a couple of ideas of something you would really want your ERG to change or implement if you had no barriers. Include contractors. I know that is an issue, absolutely. What are some other thoughts? I know this is a creative group. Minimum 1 time a year with the CEO. Have or host regular Pride catch-ups, and not only do events during Pride Month. I hear that. More events, absolutely. Onboard LGBT plus owned businesses as vendors. Executive briefing, absolutely great. Lots of events to educate. A demographic survey response data with high security. Yes, I know we have to make sure that we consider those kinds of things security-wise, absolutely. Cross-pollination between different ERG groups. Self-ID, I'm seeing a lot of self-IDs. Book club, more events, drag queens, more small group discussions, training, vulnerability discussions. I'll tell you a secret. The calendar that I use for my business is my favorite calendar. My daughter got it for me for Christmas. It's a drag queen calendar. Okay, so I'm going to show you some ideas that I've seen come up in this kind of brainstorming. Some people might want to start an ally program. Create a Pride Festival toolkit so that when you're going to Pride festivals, either marching in the parade or sponsoring a booth or doing both, that there's a toolkit that everybody can use across the ERG. LGBTQ plus History Month education, and we are in LGBTQ Month History Month this month. Share conference content across ERGs. Launch an Ally Week. Self-ID, we saw a couple of those. And collaborate with other ERGs on programming. Saw a couple of those also. So when you think about no barriers, this is a great exercise to do, because what brainstorming is really good for with your ERG is the main thing is that people feel heard. And I think we all probably know that to create that sense of belonging and engagement and commitment, people need to feel heard. And brainstorming is a great way to do that, especially blue skying it, because there's no dumb ideas. It's just brainstorming and throwing things out there. All right, so when you think about those brainstorming ideas or those blue sky thinking ideas that we just talked about, which of those that you thought about would take considerable time and or effort? So big rocks. What do you think of the ideas that you just put into the chat? Ally Week, yes, absolutely. That's going to take a lot of time. Yep. Self-ID, absolutely. Self-ID, having gone through that experience, self-ID does take a lot of time. Any others? Okay. Well, here's some ideas. Launch an ally week. Very good, Michael. Reverse mentoring program. Yes, that would absolutely take some time. Develop LGBTQ month history educational sessions. And launch an ally program. Those are all things that would take considerable time and effort, or those big rocks. So which of these things could be accomplished quickly and with minimal effort? So what are some things that we've talked about that could be completed more quickly and with minimal effort, less resources? Pride toolkit, absolutely. Great, Joshua. Others. Pulse survey. Yes, pulse surveys can be done quickly and with minimal effort, absolutely. Other thoughts? Okay, so for this exercise, plan to share conference content across the ERG. So taking what you have learned through this week and taking it back to your ERG, creating a Pride Festival toolkit, and collaborating across ERGs on programming can be something that can be done quickly and with minimal effort. So what I want you to think about now as we go forward, because we're now going to move to the prioritizing exercise. I want you to think about these things that we've talked about, and then we're going to talk about how we can begin to get our heads around prioritizing these ideas. Now, if you're actually doing this with your ERG, you're going to have tons of ideas that come out of the brainstorming or the blue sky thinking. You probably have tons of ideas right now that you've gotten from the Out and Equal conference. And so being able to write all those down and then take all those back to your ERGs and take that and amplify it with others' ideas, and you'll get that blue sky thinking and the brainstorming done. And then you can kind of begin to look at all of that and kind of quell it down a little bit. So the other two questions that you have on the brainstorming is, what from your list would you consider to be cultural change? And what barriers to implementation do you think exist? And these could vary from initiative to initiative. So if you have some large initiatives in there, that could vary depending upon what the initiative is. So those are the total of the 5 questions that you go through in the brainstorming exercise. So now we're going to move on to prioritizing, and we're going to cover a couple of questions in the prioritizing. So here we're going to cover the ERG multi-year plan prioritization worksheet, and that is loaded into the webinar, and also the 4-quadrant template. So I'll give you a second to locate those. And this is what they look like. And you'll see that the prioritization worksheet is a little bit longer than the brainstorming one. So there are 12 questions on that, and we're going to cover 3 of those today. And then we will do the exercise of prioritization on the 4 quadrants template. All right, the steps for prioritizing your multi-year plan is a primary driver for being able to implement this whole process. As I said before, I've attended a lot of conferences, and I remember one year at Out and Equal, after the conference was over, of course, this was before COVID, we had a day-long debrief as a company, and we came back so jazzed, and we had 20 work streams where our ERG planned to focus, and that's 20. We thought that was great. So how many of those work streams do you think stayed intact and made significant progress? I'll give you a second to guess. 3 to 5, 1, 5. Yep, it was 3. And even though we had 20 work streams, we still had some people who were unhappy because their specific idea did not become a work stream. And so once we came back with 20 and only 3 really got traction, how do you think folks felt about engaging with another work stream or to volunteer their time for the ERG, having kind of gone through this? Yeah, it was something we had to overcome. So what prioritization does with this multi-year planning process is to help avoid all of this so that you can get people engaged around the ideas that are important and are going to make the most impact for your ERG. So the questions we're going to look at on the prioritization worksheet are question number 2. What kinds of things are your ERG volunteers spending ERG time on that don't align with initiatives that you really want to focus on? What are some barriers to aligning most of your resources to a limited number of the most impactful Big Rock initiatives? What are some benefits to focusing on a greater number of smaller, easier, quicker initiatives versus fewer Big Rock initiatives? And then question 10, how might you overcome objections to not focusing on what someone else wants? So the first question, so what kinds of things are ERG volunteers in your ERG spending their volunteer time on that don't necessarily align with initiatives that your ERG wants to focus on, maybe don't align to the initiatives that you're trying to do that align to the DEI pillars of your company, or maybe align to your mission and vision statement for your ERG? So do you have any of those that you can think of? Okay, well, I can think of a couple. Developing a mentorship program. So when we talked about these ideas, for me, it's more what they are not doing. Okay, fair enough. And this process will actually help with that too. So when we talked about the blue sky thinking, and then we began to think about what things were big rocks, what are smaller, easier initiatives, in none of that we've talked about thus far was a mentorship program talked about. So with this particular pretend ERG that we have for this exercise, creating a mentorship program was not part of that. Developing LGBTQ plus ERG specific professional development training. That was not anything that we mentioned in the blue sky thinking or as we started to pare that down. So now tell me, what are some barriers to aligning most of your resources to a limited number of the most impactful Big Rock initiatives? Dollars. Yep. Time constraints. Absolutely. We want to do everything. Yes, that's what this exercise is to stop you from doing. My favorite saying, and Michael might remember this from our corporate days, was you can't boil the ocean. And when we come back so excited from Out and Equal, that's what we tend to do sometimes. Explaining why you prioritized what you did. Absolutely. Great, great ideas, folks. All right, the first one. People upset their initiative is not on the list right now. Some people only want to focus on their pet projects. Also, you might not have enough money. You might not have enough resources as far as people resources. So what are some benefits to focusing on a more significant number of smaller, easier, quicker initiatives versus fewer Big Rock initiatives? Why maybe would it be better to focus on a smaller number of easier, quicker initiatives and less Big Rock initiatives? Make more people happy, more engagement. Yep. Quick wins can draw positive attention, gather more supporters. Yep. Absolutely. So my big thing, Smaller, quicker initiatives show quick results, which can increase engagement. Absolutely. Feel like you guys have done this before. Okay, and then question 10. How might you overcome objections to not focusing on what someone else wants? And this is a really important question for you to think through as you're going through this process, because you're going to upset someone. It's just the way things go. And that's mainly because everybody that will be working on this with you is very passionate. And when people are passionate, they want to be working on things that they want to focus on. So how can you help overcome that? Impact of the work on others and getting the big picture. See if their idea can get tied to another one. Yes. Bringing it back to the mission and vision. That is another good idea. So here are some ideas that I have, or some suggestions. Ensure that you have a broad team assisting and being a part of the multi-year planning process, because if you have a broad representation, then chances are you are going to get folks engaged, and those folks can become ambassadors for the overall process, because they will realize and know, being a part of this, that you did have a broad representation of people, and this wasn't one or two people doing this in a vacuum. Show how the current year plan aligns to the ERG pillars or your mission and vision statement, and show them an initiative within the plan that includes their idea. Let's see what Megan said here. Help them tie their skills with the big initiative. Yes, if people have a specific skill set that perhaps could be used in a bigger initiative that maybe they didn't even think about, demonstrating how they can get involved and use their specified skill sets. Okay, so there are a lot more questions to go through on the prioritization, but like I said, I want to make sure that we get through all of this, and I want to be able to show you the documenting part. So let's move on to the 4 quadrants. This exercise is important because you need to be able to determine what's important and urgent, important and not urgent, not important and urgent, and not important and not urgent. Now, before we get started with this, I want you to understand that just because something is not important and urgent doesn't mean that it's not something that you're going to focus on. The purpose of this exercise is to figure out where you need to put your resources. And by doing this, you can determine where the resources need to go, maybe now or for the first 90 days, for 6 months, however those particular projects or initiatives are scheduled. It doesn't mean you're not going to do something, again, that's not important or urgent, or not important and not urgent. So this is just a way to really separate these things out. So I'm going to show you an example of things that might fit in these quadrants. So important and urgent, develop 1 LGBTQ+ educational session. Well, the reason that might be urgent and important is because it's October and we're in LGBTQ+ History Month right now. Develop a plan to share out and equal content across the ERG. That's important and urgent, because the longer you wait, the more people will forget, and you're not capturing that energy from either them coming back, or capturing that energy and being able to share that energy with the folks in your ERG. So important but not urgent might be launching an ally week or launching an ally program. The reason is because these are important, but these are not urgent, because these aren't things that you can do in a short period of time. These things are going to take more time. And as we talked about earlier, these are big rocks. So these might be important, which they are, but they're going to need more time. So there's not that sense of urgency. Now let's look at the urgent and not important. So it's urgent to create a Pride Festival toolkit because we need that for people to be able to have one toolkit that they can use regardless of where their chapter is, to have the branding right and know how to order their t-shirts or the tchotchkes and giveaways. But it's not important because we're not going to need this until earlier in the next year. And then last, in quadrant 4, not important and not urgent, that developing LGBTQ plus specific professional development program stuff we talked about, that is not necessarily, it's not urgent and it's not necessarily important right now because we have all these other things that we really need to focus on. And this is something that we can put on the back burner for right now. Okay, so Ed, we're talking about, well, okay, that's a good question. It could go into quadrant 4, absolutely. The reason that I didn't put it in quadrant 4 is because there is a sense of urgency. It's not really something that we can put on the back burner. And so, yes, exactly, Michael. The prioritization is tied with these quadrants. Absolutely. So you will need to complete the entire prioritizing worksheet, those 7 questions, before you move into this part of the exercise. So because we haven't gone through all 12 of those questions, this might seem a little bit, Amy, what are you doing? But this is not an exact science, okay? This is more of an art. And so depending upon your ERG's needs and where you see those needs, that's where you're going to put these. So with the Create a Pride Festival Toolkit, we're not going to need that. We know we're going to need it by probably next March or February so that people can be getting ready for June, but it's not something that we need right this minute. The developing LGBTQ plus specific professional development training, we don't have a timing on that at all. So that's why that one falls into the not important, not urgent. So I hope that helps a little bit. Ed, good. Okay. Do you have any questions? I have time for questions at the end, but before we move into the next part, I want to know if you have any questions about the brainstorming or the prioritization worksheet or using the 4 quadrants. So I'm going to stop for a minute and let you ask some questions here. And then I'm going to show you what it looks like when you start pulling this together and actually documenting a multi-year plan. So any questions? Oh, that's a good idea, Kevin. You can actually change the verbiage a little bit, and that might make it easier for people to accept this. Do I have a background in innovation or lean? A little bit. I was in corporate communications for the majority of my career, and I did work with some teams who were in the technology group, and we worked on some lean projects, so I got my experience there. The size of the group to do this process, I would suggest that you use your leadership team. So the co-chairs and if you have team chairs or committee chairs, you have some regular kind of leadership team for your group. I wouldn't put it out to, and if you have a huge leadership team, I would keep it to about no more than 8 to 10 people. 6 to 8 is probably a good number to have, but just make sure that you have a good representation either from your leadership team, or if you can include all of them, that's good. The inviting members part, I think what you could do from a member perspective and make sure you get a member perspective is do, maybe do the brainstorming and a little bit of prioritization, and then do a pulse survey or a quick survey of your members to get their feedback. So instead of giving them too many decisions with all of the brainstorming, go through that brainstorming and do that prioritization worksheet, and maybe even do a little bit with the 4 quadrants, and then go out to folks and your members, and maybe they can help verify that for you. Any other questions? Madison, are we getting any questions on the platform?
It looks like all of our questions are coming in through Zoom.
Okay, great. All right, so if there are no more questions for this, I'm going to, this was actually not part of the presentation. It's not what I put out there, but I think it's really important, and I wanted to share this with you all. Excuse me. So we're now going to talk about documenting. So after you've done the brainstorming, after you've done the prioritization, and after you've done the 4 quadrants, then you're going to have to start thinking about how you're going to document this as a multi-year plan. So what we're going to cover in this section is the documenting your ERG multi-year plan worksheet. That is not loaded for the website. I'm going to show you the worksheet and show you what it looks like. And there's going to be a QR code toward the end of the presentation. And if you will fill out a little survey for me, then I will send you copies of this worksheet, and I'll send you a copy of the aligning worksheet for the 4th step of this process, so that you will have all of the tools that I have available to be able to do your own multi-year plan. So this is what the documenting your multi-year plan looks like. This is, and what I want you to notice about this is there are 3 sections. The first section is going to be on those things that you're going to actually own as an ERG, and they're going to be your primary initiatives. The second page is going to be what the ERG owns, but it's going to be secondary initiatives. And then the third page is going to be initiatives that you will influence. And as we go through this exercise, I'm going to show you what some of those things might look like. So here are your primary initiatives, and you'll see the worksheet shows the initiative, the scope, what are your year 1 goals, year 2 goals, and year 3 goals. So here's an example of what that might look like. So let's say one of your primary initiatives is going to be to create an ally program. Here's the scope of it: an educational and visibility program to help foster and create an inclusive culture at the company. And then you have your 3-year goals. Year 1, launch a campaign drive with a goal to have 1,500 allies by the end of the year and launch an ally week. Year 2, you're going to develop sustainment, engagement, and education strategy for current allies and out at work employees. And then year 3, you're going to determine needs and a business case to develop an ally program engagement portal. So a technology piece to kind of take it all to the next level. So again, this is a primary initiative, so it's going to be one that you're going to have a lot of resources focused on. And then you're going to talk about the scope, and then you're going to look at your 3-year goals. Now, here's what I want you to remember. This is not in stone. This is to demonstrate to everyone else your executive sponsors and anybody else who might need to help with funding or support, that you've really thought this through. My recommendation is that you create the plan, and that initially, if this is going to be your first foray at multi-year planning, my suggestion would be that you come back and do it, relook at it every month for the first 6 months. And then after you get the hang of this, it's something that you can come back to every other month or every quarter. The other thing this helps you do is this helps you when you're doing executive briefings to be able to say, hey, this is our year one goal, and we're already 50% to goal, or we're already 25% to goal. Michael, that is a really great statement, and I had not thought about it that way, but this really does turn ERGs from social clubs into resource groups. And I think this really creates momentum and engagement, because it makes people realize that they actually can make a difference and that they can do something that's going to have an impact. And Kevin, to your point, it does kind of create some transferable skills that folks might not otherwise have for perhaps a role that they want to do in the future. All right, so now we're going to look at the secondary initiatives. All right, so this is one that I chose, which is professional development. So professional development training for ERG leaders delivered through quarterly webinars, development of internal leaders for ERGs at the company, and develop skills that transfer to your day job. Kevin, this was kind of what we're talking about. So you can look at a year one goal here, partner with other ERG leaders to collect the inventory of existing training and launch your first professional development series in Q3. Continue professional development series launched last year. Scope an internal professional development summit. And then year 3, bring in an outside speaker. Expand quarterly professional development series to include all ERG members. So as you'll see, this is really a secondary initiative. This is not going to take the time or resources that an ally program would take, but it's still going to take some time and resources. And so this is a way to demonstrate to people that maybe their idea didn't fall into the primary initiatives, but it's in the secondary initiatives. And it is something that you're going to focus on. This also helps you to further prioritize those things that you had in quadrants 1 and 2 and quadrants 3 and 4. So your things in quadrants 3 and maybe 3 and 4 would fall potentially into this secondary initiatives. And then last but not least is those that you're going to influence but not control. The one I picked here was self-ID. So this is not something that you're going to have control over as an ERG. This is something that you're going to want to influence with HR. And if HR is doing something about self-ID, this is something that you're going to help reinforce with your ERG and the members of the LGBTQ+ community. So the scope of this is enhanced sexual orientation self-ID system option in the HR system. That would also include gender identity, reinforce the importance of self-ID with the LGBTQ+ ERG members and allies. Year 1 goals, reinforce messaging from the company-wide self-ID initiative, rolling out in the 3rd quarter and reinforcing why it's important. And then continue to advocate for self-ID during the hiring process in year 2. Continue to cascade and encourage LGBTQ+ members to self-ID. I would also say you need to encourage allies to self-ID. And then last, in year 3, continue to advocate for peer status with African American, women, and Latinx in attracting, retaining, and developing initiatives. So how many initiatives would I recommend mapping out? I will tell you that it's really going to depend on the size of your ERG and how many people that you have that are willing to work on this. The ERG that I came from, we had a huge leadership team. So we had chapters all over the world. We had regional leadership in addition to national leadership. And so there were a lot of different people that could work on this. I would say when you do your pulse survey to see where your members are interested, use that and the information you get back from that to determine maybe which initiatives you're going to be able to get the most bang for your buck. And those are the ones that you put first in your multi-year plan. And maybe you have some that are a little further down the list. Or if you have something that you want to make sure is on the multi-year plan, don't make your first year and maybe even your second year goals too ambitious, but it will keep it on the plan and you will be able to work toward those goals in year 1 and 2. And then in year 3, maybe you have something that's a bit more ambitious to make sure that you're really making strides in that particular initiative. Yes, this can also help people that are new to an ERG or looking to start an ERG. Quite frankly, I recommend that if possible, when you go back to your companies and back to your day jobs, work with other ERGs. I mean, I think this is a big takeaway that you can take back to your company and say, look, this is what we're going to do as an LGBTQ plus ERG, but it really would be cool if all of us as ERGs could agree to do the same process. Think about what that would do to create that collaboration across ERGs. If you all know what everybody's doing and what everybody's focused on in the same year, it would elevate everything that everyone is doing. And you could also get that cross-pollination of getting other ERGs to say, hey, we're focusing on influencing self-ID too. So let's figure out how we can scope this and how we can align our year 1, 2, and 3 goals. Now, if you're doing something that is more aligned to your specific community, which would be the LGBTQ plus community, that's not really aligned to what other folks are doing, that would be something you would absolutely focus on and put all your resources toward. But if you got something like self-ID, even creating an ally program, you know, everybody needs allies. So how can you use that particular initiative and get everyone engaged to create an Ally for All program? Because quite frankly, I do a lot of stuff around allyship, and I say it in my book, LGBTQ plus ERGs have the market cornered on allyship. And I can say that because I've been an LGBTQ plus ally for as long as I can remember. And we got the market cornered on it, I promise. So how can we take what we know about creating allies and help other groups do that too? So that would be another high level initiative that would be great to get other folks to focus on. Okay, I'm going to stop and ask if there are any questions specifically about documenting. And then I want to move on to some next steps, and I'll have a few minutes. We've got a few minutes left for questions in that section too. Any specific questions about the documenting your ERG plan? Thanks, Michael. I try to be active as an ally. All right, so let's talk about what's next here. All right, I want to cover next steps for you or with you about what to do now. Then I'm going to tell you how to get a free ERG progression assessment and then we'll talk about some calls to action. So for your next steps, I want you to go back and facilitate blue sky thinking exercise with your ERG and complete the ERG multi-year prioritization worksheet and the 4 quadrants template. And if you fill out my little survey, you're going to get the other 2, and you can go through and complete all of the exercises. And then, as I mentioned earlier, talk to other leaders about starting a multi-year planning process for all your ERGs. It will have a huge impact if everybody will agree to the same process and the same standards. So this is a little plug, just little. Both of my books are available on Amazon. This is a QR code that'll take you directly there so you can get the books. And all of these worksheets are in the books, are in the companion workbook. And you will actually have access to those as everything in the companion workbook. You'll have access to online tools that you can pull down and use. Okay, so the question here is, how visible do you make your ERG plan for all ERG members? Do you track metrics on its visibility transparently as well? I don't recommend that you make details of the plan to make it available to all ERG members, simply because you're going to have a group of ERG members who are going to think that because you're making all this detail available, that means they get some input, which that would be total chaos. So I suggest that you, and I actually have a template in my book that gives an overview. It's an executive summary template, and it gives an overview of, here are the pillars that we're supporting, and here's what we're supporting under those pillars, which is where these initiatives fall, and then what the goals are of the initiatives, like for that year. So, I would have launch an ally program, or, and get 1,500 plus allies. We're 50% at goal. So you're being transparent, but you're not giving them all that detail. I think sometimes when you give people too much detail, they kind of get lost in it. So keeping it very concise and high level will let them know where the ERG is focused, and might give them an opportunity to say, hey, I'd like to help with that, but they won't get mired down in the details. So I hope that helps, Madison. Okay, another little freebie. So in my book, there is the Launch, Grow, and Thrive Progression Roadmap. And I've created a survey, especially for this webinar. And if you use that QR code, you'll be taken directly to the survey. And you can take that survey, and it will give you a score at the end of Launch, Grow, and Thrive, just to tell you where your ERG is in those particular phases, which I think it can be helpful to people to kind of see where their ERG is, and maybe where they need, what are some things that they need to work on to be able to move into the next phase. Okay. Ask Amy. You can ask me anything. You can ask me related to this presentation today. If you have questions about me, what I do, happy to talk about that too. So what questions do you have? Okay, I know I'm good, but I'm not that good. What questions do you have? How to get chapter leads more engaged. So let me ask this question. So when you're looking at chapter leads, one way to get them more engaged is to, if, for example, if you've created this multi-year plan, going over that with your chapter leads. Here are the things that we're focused on as an ERG, and have the chapter leads then be able to say, okay, as a chapter, here's how we're going to support these. One of the things that we did with launching an ally program is we actually had ally ambassadors that were in each of the chapters. So maybe you can have something like that if you're going to do an ally program, which will help get everybody in the chapter engaged. Or maybe you can have one of the chapter leads kind of serve as your multi-year plan ambassador or liaison and begin to see how the chapters can help support your overall plan. Okay, I'm gonna go down here. What? Okay. All right. Any pitfalls that you have experienced executing this? One of the pitfalls that actually, I'll tell you, after having experienced what we experienced after that One Out and Equal conference, when we had those 20 work streams, that was our big pitfall that made us say, we've got to do this differently. And so this process has really created a whole lot less pitfalls in executing this. I think some of the pitfalls might come in the fourth phase of this when you're aligning this across projects or across teams. So if you have, for example, a line of business that is focused on LGBTQ plus initiatives, or if you have an executive council that is an LGBTQ plus executive council, sometimes it might get a little hairy when you're trying to align things, you know, who's going to actually do what to help create these goals. But I think once you've gotten through the first three stages, that will help you with any hiccups that you might have in the fourth stage of aligning. And Clay, you want the link again for, I'm assuming, the previous link, this one? So there is the QR code if you want to take the ERG progression assessment. All right. Let me get, okay. What do I do for fun? Thanks for that question. Actually, my degree, I'm a classically trained opera singer. That was what my degree was. And I ended up working in banking for 20 something years. But things that I do for fun. I like to, I participate in my church's music program, which has been really weird doing that virtually. I love to snorkel and scuba dive. Actually, my husband and I, my husband is a college professor, and we're going to be going on his sabbatical in January. And so we're going to be going to the Florida Keys, and I'm going to get to do a lot of snorkeling and a lot of diving. And I'm very excited about that. How do you prevent burnout from ERG leaders? Well, one of the ways that I think you can do that is getting your ERG leaders trained on how to do their jobs. And that is what I do now, because I experienced the burnout. I saw so many people experience the burnout, and there are a lot of different things you can do. But I think one of the first things is to get ERG leaders trained and get them as a part of their own community, and then get them as a part of a larger community. I'm vice chair for something called the ERG Leadership Alliance. And that is a great way for ERG leaders to get connected. And also we do a lot of free events throughout the year. They're at Wednesdays at noon Eastern time. And so, you know, go out there and check those out. And, you know, I hope to see you at maybe some of those upcoming events. Okay, so mid-level management. Mid-level management is the most difficult. And if you're having problems with that, please know that you are not alone. there are lots of different ways to do that. That's going to require support from executive sponsors and executives. It's going to require some support from HR in order to do that. Some of the things that you can do as an ERG leader is to help your members be able to maybe include something in their performance plan about what they do with the ERG and how that is enhancing what they do, demonstrate skill sets that people are developing. Sometimes it's helpful if you can, as a metric, know how many people, and HR could probably help you with this, but understand how many people you have who are members of the ERG that have maybe had a career advancement as a partial result of what they've done within the ERG. On the ERG Leadership Alliance website, we're going to be dropping a video that's free for you. It's called ABCs of ERGs. And sometimes if you can show them information that demonstrates what ERGs are, because sometimes it's just a lack of knowledge on their part. So demonstrate what ERGs are and what they do and what an impact they can have on the company's culture, brand, those kinds of things. Sometimes that can help. Yeah, the bandwidth issue. So one of the things that I have in my book is a template, and it is a process, a template you fill out on how to ask people to help. And some of the things that I find most valuable, and I've included on that template, are things like having a job description for somebody and letting them know what exactly they're being asked to do and how much time it's going to take. Another thing you can do is, and this is in the Thrive section of my book, is talent planning. I have a process there that ERG leaders can use to do talent planning with other leaders within, like, committee leaders and team leaders, so that you can begin to see who's kind of stepping up and who might be ready next for a leadership role. And maybe if somebody has bandwidth issues, if you've done that talent planning piece, you have some people that you can maybe go to and say, hey, can you step in and help? And Michael, get them paid, I get it. As a matter of fact, we just did a session this past Wednesday on some research that has been done, and we're going to get the research out as soon as it's ready. But the group that did the research about paying ERG leaders or how you can reward them. And it's some really interesting stuff that came out about that. So I think maybe that once that report is available, again, it'll be available on the ERG Leadership Alliance website. I think it'd be a great source for that information. Oh, I've swam with the dolphins. It is awesome. Okay, folks, last but not least, call to action. Here is the brief survey that you can complete to get the 2 remaining multi-year plan worksheets. And then I love to chat about ERGs and how I can help. And here is a QR code if you want to get some time on my calendar. And I will leave these up for a second so that you can check these out. Thank you all for coming. I hope what I shared with you today is going to be helpful and doing your multi-year planning. I want to tell you that having been an ERG leader, I know sometimes it can be the most thankless job you've ever had, but I want you to hear me say that what you're doing is important, and the impact that you're having, you might not see the impact you're having, but I guarantee you, you are changing people's lives, not just at your company, but you are also changing people's lives and how they function in the world. And there is no more important thing that you can do. So thank you from me for doing what you do. Thanks, everybody. Hope to see you in an upcoming ELA event. And I hope I get to chat with some of you folks with some time on my calendar. Take care and have a great weekend.